So does controlling this supply chain protect you from the global shocks, or it actually increases exposure?
One of the few companies that own IP and are ahead in catching up with them, and then we'll move ahead of them. It's very, very important to own your IP.
KPI that you track obsessively: customer qualifications, carbon footprint per turn, cash conversion cycle, or R&D team retention.
And as we started scaling up that business, I started realizing that
So welcome everyone. Our today's guest is on a mission to make India a serious contender in the global battery race. So meet Mr. Vikram Handa, Managing Director of Epsilon Advanced Materials, the first Indian company to produce both anode and cathode battery materials in-house, controlling the supply chain right from coal tar to finished materials. He's betting big over projects across India, North Carolina, and Finland, building around 1 lakh tons of capacity in Karnataka by 2030 and aiming for nothing less than making India a net exporter of battery materials. Mr. Vikram, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Divya. Very happy to be here.
Great. So, Mr. Vikram, we know that Epsilon is one of the very few in the world and the first in India to integrate both anode and cathode production. For those who are not in the weeds and not aware of this, can you unpack what this strategy actually looks like on the ground and how it positions India to compete globally in this sector?
Yeah, sure. So I think I go back to maybe 2011 when I started Epsilon Carbon, a more B2B chemical company, manufacturing locations in India, and focusing more on the Indian market. 2019 is when I started Epsilon Advanced Materials, and that was our focus on battery materials and particularly graphite for lithium-ion batteries. So it was derived out of a forward integration of our parent business. That's where we got the idea to make coal tar pitch into coke, coke into synthetic graphite. And as we started scaling up that business, I started realizing that there's a real opportunity to complement our anode with a cathode business. While the anode was our own IP and we had spent a lot of money and 6 years developing it, I went out looking for cathode technologies. And there are basically two technologies: nickel, manganese, cobalt, NMC, and LFP. I felt back in 23 that LFP will be the winner. I was seeing it very well established in China. And that's where I said, let me try to access this technology somewhere. We looked at joint ventures with Chinese companies, but there just wasn't technology available. And we were fortunate to acquire this technology center in Germany, which came with more than 100 IP and a team with more than 100 years of experience just on LFP. And today, LFP is turning out to be the winner and also getting banned from export of China. So I think we got a real head start uh, via this acquisition, and now looking to really build large commercial plants in India and globally as we see opportunities for that.
So let's talk about this virtual integration that you have, right? From having the coal tar to the final materials. So does controlling this supply chain protect you from the global shocks, or it actually increases exposure?
So when we look at our graphite business, if you look at, and this business only sits in China, you can't even say it predominantly sits in China. It's like 100% in China today, synthetic graphite. China produces about 2 million tons, and our plant in India is 2,000 tons only, right? So, and that this 2,000-ton plant is the biggest ex-China plant today. So you can imagine how mature China is and how the rest of the world is.
Huge gap.
Yeah, huge, huge gap. And it takes a lot of capital, a lot of technology, a lot of time to build these plants also. So in China, what happens predominantly is there are other people in like petroleum refiners who are making coke, and the Chinese anode makers buy various cokes, blend it, that's their recipe, and that's how they make graphite out of that. We developed technology to convert coal tar pitch into coke, and we make various cokes ourselves, depending on what the end use of graphite needs to be. So to give you an idea, if you're making something for energy storage, we would make a different coke. If you need something for two-wheeler application, a different coke. And if you need something that's fast charging, in a four-wheeler, that's a different kind of coke. Because a lot of things get defined in the coke, and a lot of properties get defined while you process the coke into graphite as well.
So you've kind of created a customized products based on the end consumer's need.
Yeah, and that supply chain security is very, very important today. I think after COVID is where customers also started realizing how close am I to my raw material, and how secure is my raw material source? Because a disruption can really impact, their production as well.
Yes,
I
yes.
think in the whole, when you look at the EV industry and this supply chain, the most critical part is material stability,
Yes.
right? Customers want a very consistent material over the life of the battery and then the car as well. And I think being backward integrated gives us that advantage of stability and raw material security.
Mhm. And I think that's what people have been facing very diligently these days, because after the import sanctions that China displaced and so many shipments got stuck of the rare earths, I think
Yes.
all of the companies that were into making these batteries and all of that, they had to face this bottleneck that they couldn't. They either had to slow down the production or stop it altogether, or the cost would have increased for the end consumer.
Yeah. So you
So.
bring up a very good topic in rare earths, because what has played out in rare earths in the last 18 months is the
Mhm.
same conversations that have been happening around graphite out of China. They first put
Mhm.
export restrictions, then they said we'll export by permit. They've not
Mhm.
banned the export of graphite, but they're also choosing which countries today are allowed to buy graphite out of China. And
Mhm.
the day the ban on rare earths happened, that's when every country looked inward and said, "Why don't we have capacity? How could we become so dependent on the Chinese?" And then obviously the
Exactly.
conversation was around cost and technology and why didn't we build capacity? Why didn't companies invest? Why did
Mhm.
this policy facilitate investment? And now
Mhm.
everybody kind of runs around trying to figure that out. The same thing can happen in graphite, and I think, in my opinion at least, it will happen. Is
Mhm.
that today countries are looking to build their own cells, own battery materials. They want to be self-reliant, de-risk of crude. But if tomorrow China pulls the plug on graphite, all gigafactories will come to a halt, and then
Mhm.
transition will stop. And then the Chinese would love it that you keep buying cells from them or keep buying cars from them because they have overcapacity. So I think it's very
Mhm.
important to realize what is the bottleneck in the whole
Mhm.
energy transition space. Whether you look at EVs or storage, I think really graphite is that challenge.
Mhm. And I think there is a chance that you can prepare for it before it lands up into a situation like rare earths.
Yes, 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 definitely.
Okay. So we have, you just mentioned that you bought a cathode technology center in Germany, which came with a lot of experience and a lot of people that already working there. So can you share a specific breakthrough that made you think that we are not just catching up, we are actually going to lead this in terms of the anode, cathode, and the graphite situation that you're talking about?
Yeah. So the cathode is quite interesting. Today in a cell, cathode is about 40% by value. So if I'm a cell
Mm.
customer, I'm first going to try to solve my cathode problem, identify a supplier, negotiate those contracts. But what happened in China was that the Chinese were constantly innovating. I give them a lot of credit. And they moved
Mhm.
this LFP cathode powder from a Gen 1 to a Gen 2 to a Gen 3, and now they're Gen 4. When we
Mhm.
acquired this facility in Germany, they were at about a Gen 1, 1.5, and good product, but not
Mhm.
up to the mark of where the Chinese had reached. Since taking
Mhm.
it over, we are now at a Gen 2.5 product. We are just about to hit a Gen 3 product in the coming months. And
Mhm.
when I mean every generation, that every generation product gives you more energy capacity and brings it closer to NMC performance. So from
Mhm.
a automaker or energy storage company, you start saying, look, I'm getting 5% lower performance, but 30% lower cost. It's worth it. So
Mhm.
that is what has happened in LFP material, say, development, which has led to LFP cell development, which has led to LFP being more adopted.
Mhm.
Now, this industry, because it's moving so fast, it's very, very important that companies in this space own their own IP. And you have to constantly innovate. You have to spend a lot of money on R&D. It's
Mhm.
not an industry where you can just take technology or license out of China and go build a plant, because by the time you build that plant, they will have moved ahead. So you have to kind of be at that same speed.
Mhm.
Also, China has totally restricted the export of Gen 3 and Gen 4 LFP technologies. So what does that do really? If a company doesn't own its IP, but say has $100 million to invest, you have absolutely no access to technology. You are back in
Yeah.
the lab. You have to start in the lab, go to pilot, go to commercial. It will take you 5 years to scale up. By then, they will have moved ahead. So, by banning these technologies, which only sit in China, they have sent everybody else 5 years behind, in our opinion. And we are
Mhm.
one of the few companies that own IP and are ahead in catching up with them, and then we'll move ahead of them. It's very, very important to own your IP and constantly innovate.
Agreed. So, like you said, that you have been investing heavily into innovating and securing your own IPs. So, has there ever been a moment when you thought, or someone from the team thought, that we are pushing too far, too fast? Or has bold R&D always been the play for you?
I mean, it's very frustrating because you obviously want to make progress with the customer, but
Mm-hmm.
it's a very iterative journey. And today when a customer gives us a spec, it takes us 3 to 4 months to make that product. It takes him 2 to 3 months to test it. So
Mm-hmm.
then 6 months have gone by, and he says, no, 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 this wasn't good. I want this. Then
Mm-hmm.
another 4 to 5 months go by. So we've done
Mm-hmm.
this journey for the last 4 years, and it's nothing new. It's a
Mm-hmm.
journey that everybody has to go through to qualify with cell companies because it's a tough qualification process.
Mm-hmm.
But once you qualify, there's huge stickiness. So
Yeah.
I always look at the business and say, look, the first requirement of the business is we have to meet the customer's requirements. But
Mm-hmm.
they have their own cell technology. They have certain requirements of anode, cathode. And one of the things we're doing, because we're one of the few companies that are both in anode and cathode, today what we're really working on is marrying our anode and cathode. And I look at it that I can go to a cell company and say, look, if you buy my X anode and Y cathode, you will get this performance in your cell. And the R&D and the effort in developing cell technology will help me sell my anode and cathode. I have no ambition to do cell manufacturing myself, but
Mm-hmm.
if I can do this, say, value add service to a customer, I think he will have huge stickiness buying our battery material. So we want to provide this solution to them rather than just like say, okay, here's a product A or product B.
Mhm. And in this process, the customer has the supply chain security plus a huge quality control over the materials, a consistent quality that you provide.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, everybody has entered this space with a different outlook. And if you just look at India, Ola has gone on its own journey of developing cell technology. Exide has partnered with S-Volt, Amara Raja with Goshen. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
the US automakers partner with Japanese and Korean cell makers. So if you're going to do it with a very mature Korean or Japanese, they will give you the tech. But if you're going to do it on your own, it takes a while to figure it out and scale it up. So if a battery material company can help you provide that solution, I think
Mm-hmm.
it's a good partnership as well.
Makes sense. So, coming to how Epsilon has, 10% lower carbon footprint and zero water discharge at its plants.
Yeah.
So, in practice, does sustainability help seal more B2B deals, or is it still just a compliance checkbox?
So I think you have to look at regions differently.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the reasons we went to build our project in Finland as well
Mm-hmm.
was that we saw the very strong EU regulations on carbon footprint,
Yeah.
decarbonization, and our customers were getting ESG linked funding. So they had a commitment to come to responsible suppliers with a lower carbon footprint. And that's the reason we went to Finland, where we have 100% green power available over, say, another country in Europe. I would say today there's so much pricing pressure on the whole value chain, starting from a car to a mine. I don't think customers are able to pay that premium. But when we look at projects, and all three projects in India, anode cathode business, Finland, our anode business, or US, our anode business, we actually very early on in the project do a life cycle analysis study. And that
Okay.
tells us if we build this plant here with the utilities, with everything around us, what will be our carbon footprint? So one of the European automakers gave us a target of 6 kgs of CO2 per kg of graphite. And when we did our life cycle analysis study in Finland, we were at 5.2. So,
Wow.
it doesn't get you, say, a premium in the market, but it
Mm-hmm.
puts you on the top of the, say, the companies they would like to work with because they look at us more responsibly. Today,
Mm-hmm.
India also is about a 70% lower carbon footprint than the same material made in China.
Okay.
These are things that you design at a project level, and we are very focused towards this. So small things add up, and then your technology and your design reflect this.
And in the greater picture, it actually pays off.
Yeah, it will
Oh.
definitely pay off. Like I've seen it pay off in our parent business also, where we did a lot of things on utilities and reducing our carbon footprint and LCA. And eventually our customers come back, our tire companies come back, our aluminum companies come back because they also have sustainability goals. So they kind of
Yeah.
put you in a, like say, the preferred supplier bucket because they see you
Mhm.
focused on that. So I think it's very, very important.
So, have there been any particular projects that you have won or lost purely because of the sustainability standards?
So on a parent business, I can tell you we have a long-term contract with the aluminum smelter in the Middle East.
Mm-hmm.
And they have a huge focus on sustainability because they provide aerospace industry and other niche industries where they get a premium for green aluminum. And
Mm-hmm.
that led to them coming to us and saying, you guys, we have identified have the lowest carbon footprint, and they
Mm-hmm.
allocate more volume to us. So we win more and more, say, long-term contracts with them. I think
Mm-hmm.
on our graphite business, still some European customers are very particular about the carbon footprint of the product because they have a
Mm-hmm.
large Excel sheet where they see the carbon footprint of the car, and then they see, okay, what did nickel do? What did lithium do? What did graphite do? And they calculate everything. And as this
Calculated
transition
that way.
towards a battery passport moves, the regulation
Mm-hmm.
gets stronger, the data collection gets stronger, things become more transparent. And once things become
Mm-hmm.
transparent and they're more, say, validated, then you can
Mm-hmm.
link that to funding, to other advantages, to sustainability linked debt. So all these things can come up, but you need a little bit more transparency to come into the industry.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, in all, it does pay off well.
Yeah, it's a very fundamental thing. It's a very fundamental thing when we build our businesses.
Mm-hmm. So, again, so qualifying materials with global cell manufacturers sounds intense. So, can you walk us through the customer qualification process, which I've heard is really, really long?
Yeah.
So, and highlight the toughest hurdle for an India supplier to crack this OEM club.
So I think it's a very painful journey.
Mm-hmm.
We've been at it for 6 years now.
Yeah.
And I always tell anyone that when you look at entering the battery material space, at least, it's 10
Mm-hmm.
years to cash flow, right? So you should not enter this industry thinking, oh, I'll build a factory and I'll get money in 3 years. And just because it's a very, very large space that's growing at 20-30% CAGR doesn't mean everyone's a winner. It's
Yeah.
very, very difficult to win in this industry, and you have to have that long runway. So
Mm-hmm.
not in an India environment, these businesses aren't great for startups because you'll raise little
Mm-hmm.
capital, you'll struggle, you have to constantly raise money, and you might not be
Mm-hmm.
able to get to that eventuality. So the journey starts by you giving, say, the customer tells you, look, I have an ESS application. Let's take example of a US customer for four-wheelers.
Oh.
So he'll come to us and
Mm-hmm.
say, look, I have I'm building a four-wheeler car in the US market and I have these requirements. So he'll give you a broad requirement of two, three parameters. We'll recommend him an
Mm-hmm.
off-the-shelf product that we have designed. 3 or 4 months
Mm-hmm.
later, he'll come back to us saying, look, it was okay. Now I'm telling you six more parameters. I want you to make something to this. It will take us 3 to 4 months to make it because we are also starting from the coke, making graphite, making a cell,
Yeah.
validating it, and then giving him the material.
Mm-hmm.
He will also do the same at his side. He will make a cell and he will validate us. He'll come back and say, look, this didn't work. Because we are talking anode, but what he's doing on the cathode or the electrolyte or other additives, we don't know. That's his recipe and
Yeah.
his trade secret. So you will not
Mm-hmm.
just like hit the bullseye in one go. So
In one
this
go, yeah.
iterative journey at a few kg level will go on for 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we're going back and forth, back and so now, say two, two, two
Yes.
and a half years later, you have met all of his 8 parameters, and he says, okay,
Mm-hmm.
great, you are qualified at a kg level. Now give
Mm-hmm.
me at a ton level. I need to see commercial production. So now
Okay.
we'll produce at a ton level. He will put it in a bigger cell. So he'll put it in a
Mm-hmm.
multi-layer pouch cell, and he will also invest in qualifying and testing us. So then
Mm-hmm.
another year goes by. So now it's
Mm-hmm.
about 3.5 years down. and he says, okay, you're qualified. Now I want to
Mm-hmm.
get into a contract with you for you to go build a plant.
Mm-hmm.
Then you enter into these contracts, and then it takes you about 18 to 24 months to build a plant.
Mm-hmm.
And then the stickiness starts because the way he's qualified you and the way he's put you into his supply chain, he can't get rid of you either. So the
Mm-hmm.
next 6 years, you have a very good contract to supply him, but you have
Mm-hmm.
to go through the journey of qualifying at commercial scale and him having confidence in your processes, in your material stability, in your ability to supply. So that journey takes time.
So for one client, you kind of invest around close to 5 years.
5 years, but in parallel, you're working with other customers as well.
Yeah.
And then that journey starts getting shorter with other customers as
Mm-hmm.
you have developed more and more material.
Certain standards, yeah.
So, for example, the US customer will ask us, look, my cell needs to perform at 500 miles range and
Mm-hmm.
10-minute charge,
Okay.
right? We go back and start working at a coke level, how that
Mm-hmm.
happens at a cell level. So there's a lot of
Oh.
know-how that we have of what happens at a cell and what the anode does, and
Mm-hmm.
he has a lot of cell know-how. So you have to
Mm-hmm.
bridge this whole thing, and at the end, that product you have to make. So that these are the kind of products we're making, which hopefully you will see in cars in 2028 in the US market, where
Mm-hmm.
500 miles an EV can go and charge in 10 minutes.
A full charge in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay. So, from what I can understand is that the integration process is kind of what gives you a good control of how to go back through all the steps, right? But does this not become a little more time consuming than what it would have been if it was not virtually integrated?
No, then I'd be buying Coke from other customers and trying different recipes. Should I
Mm-hmm.
do 30/70? Should I do 50/50? So it's a still,
Mm-hmm.
I need to blend certain things to get there.
Mm-hmm.
Here, I control my processes actually much more better.
Efficiently.
Yeah, it's much, much more better.
Okay. So qualifying materials with global cell manufacturers again sounds intense, like you just explained. So when we talk about your investment, future investments, so let's say your North Carolina project, which is around $650 million. The Finland project is again 500 million euros, and Karnataka stands at 9,000 crore by 2030. So we know that the EV tech changes fast. It is very evolving. So how do you protect such massive bets from being leapfrogged by new chemistry or policy changes?
So this market is like almost impossible to time, right? Whether you look
Mm-hmm.
at EV transition, customer investments, policy, like you said, it's very, very difficult to time. So you have to be very patient. There
Mm-hmm.
were huge projections of what India would be doing in 2025. It didn't happen. But will it happen in
Mm-hmm.
27? Will it happen in 2030? But you know that India will be a large market whenever
Yeah.
it happens. So you have to kind of stay in the space and make sure that when the wave comes, you're riding it. Right. So, like I said, I always look at the business to say that if I can, I first have to make what the customer wants. So we have
Mm-hmm.
done that now. Now we
Mm-hmm.
are negotiating these contracts, like I was telling you, and we hope in the next few months to enter into these large contracts. The challenge that happens
Mm-hmm.
in a country like India is that initially the scale will not be so big. So
Okay.
we want to build a 30,000 ton graphite plant to start with that caters to
Mm-hmm.
30 gigawatt hours. I don't see a customer coming 30 gigawatt hours immediately, but I can't build a smaller plant. It's not efficient. So
Yeah.
I have to build this 30,000 ton plant and export 25,000 and
Mm-hmm.
keep 5,000 for India, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the way we're looking at the business. So I started
Mm-hmm.
focusing more on international customers, but to build
Mm-hmm.
in India,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I want eventually India to be for India, but I can't build the business day one for India because my customer is not ready today. So I look at it that I will build in India, export. At the same time, I build in the US, and US will become for US, and India will become for India because I will be with these customers as they start.
So later on, when the capacity or the demand increases, you already have a ecosystem ready for it.
Yeah, and if I'm selling him 1,000 tons for 1 gigawatt hour, when he goes to 5 gigawatt, he will buy from me more. So my customer will grow, I will grow, and then like that journey starts from the beginning. So,
Mm-hmm.
but these investment decisions are very complicated. It has a very large capital requirements like graphite plants, 100,000 ton, 9,000 crores. Uh, in the headroom to grow is a lot more. In the
Mm-hmm.
US, we're talking $650 million. we might increase that number to more than $1 billion. But again, 50,000 tons. Today, the US buys 500,000 tons. So 50,000 tons is not a lot, but the capital going in is a lot. So you need more companies to invest. You need more players to enter the space. But like I said, there's this 5, 6 year journey to get there.
Which is why you've mentioned earlier that this is not for the frail startups because again, the capital requirement is huge. Then they would want the revenues to come in, and it would kind of mess up with their.
Yeah, so look, you have to look at the business and also say that I'm going to enter the battery material space and I'm an R&D facility. I'm going to innovate and license tech, and I'm not going to build large industrial plants. Or you say, look, I have the capacity, I'm going to industrialize. So you have to know like where is your goalpost, and maybe you just innovate and license, and that's also great, and we need that in a country like India. Or you also need people to industrialize. So you have to see where you sit. In contrast, the cathode business is much lower capex. So we've announced, I think, a 5,000 crore investment in Karnataka to build a 100,000 ton plant that will cater to 50 gigawatt hours, and that's much more modular. So you can build a 10,000 ton line, then you can add another 10,000 ton line. So it's easier to build versus anode.
Okay. So beyond lithium ion, is there one emerging chemistry or process that you think could define the next decade? Something you're watching closely that others might have overlooked?
So I'm very bullish on sodium ion.
Mm-hmm.
I really think it's going to be the winner in 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
We spend a lot of time in China, traveling around China, and like just like how LFP came out of nowhere, maybe to rest of the world, but was very established in China. In the last, say, 6, 8 months, when I go to China, I'm seeing sodium ion become very commercial. And it's not only cell makers; it's when you start seeing end application, cell making, and battery material companies also. You realize that this is about to explode. So I think because it's not only about the sodium ion cell, right? Someone needs to make the anode, someone needs to make the cathode. Then only will the cell maker grow.
Yes.
So I see that happening. And the last year, we've been working on sodium ion hard carbon also, which is the anode for sodium ion. We think it will take off in the next couple of years.
Okay. Right now, India imports all its battery materials, right? And exports almost none. So you're aiming to flip that coin. So what's the single biggest unlock that could make India not only self-sufficient, but a global exporter?
I think again, it's policy. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and when I talk about policy today, what we really need as Indian battery material company, I speak about a lot of us, is we need customers
Yeah.
because our customer is not ready. So to build a supply chain in India, we need customers. And in my opinion, the customer sits in the US. But that market is maybe 5 to 6 years ahead of us.
Mm-hmm.
Different reasons. The Inflation Reduction Act, a lot of the recent Trump, say, bills, it's pushing this industry ahead, both energy storage and EVs. What we need is customer. Now, why will the US choose to buy from India and not choose to buy from somewhere else? There are many more tariffs on China today, but I think there's an opportunity to even friendshore with the US on critical minerals. We had signed a MSP, a Mineral Security Pact, a few years ago. So I think these are the things where the US and India should say, look, we can help each other. That will bring both investment and technology to India. And we want many more anode players, we want many more cathode players. Because if you have many anode and cathode players, the cell companies will come to India as well. But India is the ideal place, in my opinion, to build this industry out because we are both capex and opex efficient.
Mm-hmm.
When you compare to China, where things are, much more efficient.
Okay. So for the next couple of questions, it's going to be really quick and instinctive. So you just have
Sure.
to choose the first thing that pops into your mind.
Sure.
Okay. So the most underrated material in the battery tech, graphite, silicon, manganese, aluminum, or something else entirely.
So definitely graphite.
Okay. All right. So the biggest R moment in Epsilon's global expansion, it's Europe's regulatory complexity, US market scale, discovering supply chain vulnerabilities, or realizing customer expectations differ drastically.
I think learning customers' expectations, how they differ, and how they have very, very high expectations on quality, stability, and performance. I think that's been the real learning curve in this business.
Okay. So, business principle that you swear by: perfect is the enemy of good, integrity over profitability, speed beats perfection, or think global, execute local.
I think global, execute local,
Okay.
definitely.
Okay. Common Indian deep tech founder mistake: understanding execution complexity, overestimating domestic demand, ignoring global standards from day one, or not building strong teams early.
I think underestimating execution and a little bit
Mhm.
of building the right team as well.
Right, teams early.
Yeah, early
Okay.
on.
Okay. Battery trend that deserves more attention: EV supply chain awareness, fast charging infra challenges, grid scale storage, or China's supply chain dominance.
I think it's a bit of both. It's a bit of all, I would say. I think one thing is definitely awareness about China, and it's come because of rare earths. I've
Mm-hmm.
been talking like a broken tape recorder with the government for a few years about processing industry, we should build it. I think the rare earths brought that focus little bit. So I think that needs more media attention, definitely.
Okay. All right. So, country that impresses you in materials innovation: Germany, South Korea, Finland, or Australia?
Definitely South Korea. I think they have really been in this industry 10, 15 years and built
Mhm.
this whole ecosystem. Very, very impressed with how they operate out there.
All right. What keeps you up at night? Tech disruption risk, talent challenges, regulatory uncertainty, or all three equally?
I think talent acquisition. I think
Mm-hmm.
this industry is very new,
Mm-hmm.
and we are building that industry ourselves, that space, that know-how. So I think the team is very important as we build these businesses.
The
But I
right
sleep
people for
well.
the
I
right job.
don't stay up at night.
Okay. KPI that you track obsessively: customer qualifications, carbon footprint per turn,
Hmm.
cash conversion cycle, or R&D team retention.
I think for the last 5 years, it's been customer qualification and offtakes because it's such a painful journey and there's no defined timeline. I think this is where gradually time has the sample shaped, has it gone into testing? Because that next feedback is when you take that next step ahead. So I think I track that very closely.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, aspect of China's approach that you like to copy: governments and industries collaboration, speed to scale, integrated supply chain, or patient capital.
I think all, once again, China's done a great job when it comes to all of them. There's a lot to learn from them. When
Mm-hmm.
government policy says something, funding and industry just trickle down and it gets created, whether it's solar or EVs or batteries. I think there's a lot to learn, but it's not easy to do in a country like India. I think government policy has been good in India. I don't have any complaints there. They're at the end an enabler, right? It's up to companies like us and
Mm-hmm.
individuals to invest and build. I think
Mm-hmm.
the government has enabled. It's up to us to do it. I think the access of capital, risk capital in India needs to improve. To build these industries, someone has to have the risk appetite other than just the promoter.
Mm-hmm.
That's lacking.
Don't you think that the chemistry that the government and the industries have had in China has really played a key role in having China where it is today?
Yeah, definitely. I think you can see the data that today China's crude imports have gone down just because
Mm-hmm.
EVs, energy storage, solar. So the crude requirement goes down. India has a very clear ambition to reduce imports of crude, but you come out with a 18,000 crore ACC PLI to encourage cell making, but it defeats the purpose if you import 15,000 crores worth of battery materials from China and just don't really capture value add. So I think it's
Mm-hmm.
important to understand way to kind of facilitate industries to develop and where are our strengths, and then the value chain gets created.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, if you could complete this: India's biggest advantage in the global battery race is.
I think our ability to innovate
Mm-hmm.
inherently as India, I'm very bullish on that, and really our ability to industrialize. If I see what happens in India every year, or if you take a 5, 10 year outlook, I think it's incredible what's happening on infrastructure and also our ability to really industrialize and build large and be globally competitive in various industries is the reason why this industry should come up in India, in my opinion.
Great. So, for the audience that are there as entrepreneurs, investors, and policy watchers
Yeah.
who want in on India's battery materials revolution, where should they start as per your opinion, and what's the space they should be watching closely?
Yeah, so definitely China is a great place, but actually I would first start in Japan because everything started in Japan with companies like Panasonic, Sony, Sanyo. I'm talking 15, 20 years ago. And somewhere the Japanese lost the ability to industrialize and compete, and China went ahead. So I
China
think
took it up and started
yeah,
higher.
China took it ahead, and not only did they industrialize, they also innovated at an incredible pace. So I think it's important to go back to the starting point and see what went wrong in Japan to make sure that countries like us don't do that. There's some great battery shows that happen in Japan, Korea, and China, which I go to every year. And every year, things have changed. Things have changed, and you get very good ideas there. And I think eventually you have to visit factories in China to see how they have simplified the industry and how they build and how they're very efficient, both in capex and opex. There's a huge learning there. I think these are the places to go out and really understand tech. We are today solving today's problem, but we're also trying to solve a 5-year problem, a 10-year problem. So that focus on innovation has to be there as you industrialize and chase, cash flow.
Okay, so people start with going to Japan and China and learning about the future tech.
Yeah, yeah,
Great.
that's the place to start.
Okay, so one policy that you change tomorrow to speed India's progress.
I would really encourage customers to come to India. I would, whether it's pulling Korean companies, Japanese companies, or even allowing joint ventures with mature Chinese companies. India needs customers. India needs someone to bring technology to build. It takes too long to learn, even a self person. So bringing mature technology to India with local partners to build cell plants, I think will really help the battery material industry mature in India faster.
So simplifying their entry and
Yeah.
getting
And
more
again,
collaborations with.
a lot to learn from the US. That's what they did by putting in Korean and Japanese. And that's how the automakers have built huge capacity.
Okay. So one person to follow for smart battery industry insights.
There's an interesting guy I follow on LinkedIn called Christopher Chico. He writes a lot about the whole industry, about cells, about battery materials. I think he has a blog also. Very up to
Okay.
date, very plugged in with his feedback.
Okay. And if I would, request you to share that one book or idea that has fundamentally shaped your business worldview.
So I try to read a lot of autobiographies. I think I've read almost all books on Elon Musk because it's amazing to see like his ability to take risk and like just
Get
dive
big.
into industry like all in and innovate also. And I also read a lot of books by Ram Charan. The last one I read was on execution because one is innovating and also the ability to
And
execute.
its execution.
So I think
Yes.
these are my last two really good reads.
Great. So I think yes, what you really draw out of there is that your guts to bet big into something that people are not yet aware of, and then making people want it altogether. So that's what I think happened with Elon Musk. Introducing EVs
Yeah,
at a time that people were not even aware of where this would land to, and now it has become an aspiring product.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So means I know battery materials and graphite or anode cathode are not as exciting as a red Tesla, but I think it's very important.
Fundamentals, they're the stepping stones of how this would lead to.
Yeah, I think it's very appealing and maybe not so B2C, but like you said, it's a very fundamental building block for this industry.
Yeah. All right. So, I think we'll wrap this up here. It was a really great session. Thank you so much for the condor and for taking us inside this, the strategies, the risks, and the vision behind building India's battery material backbone. So I think these are the kind of conversations that, kind of remind us that future isn't just, being built in China or Japan. India is also taking significant steps forward. And thanks to, companies like Epsilon and leaders like you who are taking great steps forward to it.
No, thank you very much. They were great questions, and I hope your viewers find it interesting.
Definitely. I'm sure it'll be a delight for them to watch, and lots of insights from you that they'll really find useful.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It was lovely speaking to you.